Some Niners faithful, this is Juju Talk Sports. This is my co-host, Jose Corral. 49 reasons to listen, but most importantly, folks, the number one reason you should be listening this week is because it is week one of the NFL season, and the Niners will be playing the Arizona Cardinals. The mainstream media has talked about them, folks. They have hyped them up. Kyler Murray, the next MVP, Cliff Kingsbury, clearly going to be a top 5 Coach of the Year candidate, according to Vegas. At least odds makers are predicting that. But you know what I'm predicting? A big week one victory for the San Francisco 49ers as they are 7-point favorites according to Vegas odds. Jose, what are your initial thoughts on this matchup?
My initial thoughts is I'm actually kind of intrigued to see what Arizona team we're going to see. Like you mentioned, a lot of attention on this team during the offseason, a big acquisition at the wide receiver position, who they just finished paying as well. So I'm actually intrigued to see how well this Arizona team is going to match up against what people are saying are the division favorites and NFC favorites. I'm hoping the games aren't going to be as close as they were last year against Arizona. That 7 points is kind of a little bit on the high end for me. If I was a big-time bettor, I don't know if I would put too much money on the Niners covering a 7-point spread, especially in week one in a divisional game. But it'll be interesting to see how well Kyler Murray is going to eventually be here in his second season, to start his second season. He did give the Niners a little bit of trouble in the last 2 games last year. So it'll be interesting to see if he adds a couple more wrinkles to his game, if his passing ability gets a little bit better, and if that could actually pose a little bit of a threat to that Niners secondary, because we know he could extend plays, and we know it's going to be difficult for the Niners to be able to get to him and to be able to contain him outside of the pocket. But now it's, can he really beat us with his arm? I think no for now, and I'm hoping that it stays that way this Sunday.
Okay, I'm going to name 3 matchups. I want you to tell me which of these intrigues you the most. The Niners defensive line and trying to corral Kyler Murray, Richard Sherman on the outside versus DeAndre Hopkins, or the rookie, Isaiah Simmons, who's going to be in that Arizona defense for a long time against all-pro tight end George Kittle.
Well, I'm going to like that matchup against Isaiah Simmons, who I was a huge fan of coming out of Clemson, against George Kittle. Don't think it's necessarily going to be as much of a big impact as people think, just because I don't think the Arizona defense is going to be, just leaving poor Isaiah Simmons in his first NFL game, having to deal with one of the best tight ends in the league. So I think they're going to try to throw different coverages as far as secondary-wise, giving different looks to George Kittle. But I am really intrigued to see how this defensive line could, corral against a mobile quarterback. Just because mobile quarterbacks have always been, the Achilles heel of a defense that kind of really depends on its defensive ends getting to the cornerback and having those edge rushers have a lot of disruption in that backfield. So to me, that's going to be the key point of the game to begin with. And the most interesting thing to look at is to see if Nick Bosa, if he gets to that second level in that backfield, if he's going to be able to get there and to get there with enough time before Kyler Murray kind of gets outside of the pocket. Because once he's outside of the pocket, it's really hard for any defender, let alone a big 250-pound defensive lineman, to try to get him down. So I think that's going to be not only the most interesting thing to look at, but it's going to be the key of the whole game, is to see if the Niners are going to bring enough pressure to get him early and to get him down.
It kind of makes you wonder. So Nick Bosa in his press conference this week did mention you just kind of have to keep your eyes on the hips of these mobile quarterbacks. So whether or not he himself has learned and what the Cardinals' game plan will be, if they're going to implement a little bit more read option, because I know that was a big problem for the Niners last year against Baltimore and Lamar Jackson. If that's the case, then that's what had the Niners defensive ends chasing and breaking contain, and that's a problem if that does happen. I completely agree. One big problem the Niners also face: sophomore wide receiver Deebo Samuel already ruled out. It was going to be a stretch to see him in week one, as is. We were hopeful. The tape said that he was looking close, but missed the last couple practices. But you know who at least made a full practice? Brandon Ayuk, the rook. So potentially the wide receiving core could see a combination of Ayuk, Trent Taylor, Dante Pettis, Kendrick Bourne rolled out there. Which of these Niners receivers do you like to shine potentially in week one? And are you worried with that wide receiving group?
I'm actually really interested to see Kendrick Bourne. We've been talking about the offseason that he's been having, and I know him posting on Instagram and on Twitter his workouts doesn't necessarily mean that he's going to have this breakout season, but the dude looks jacked. He looks faster than last year. So I'm really excited to see him because Brandon Ayuk, yes, it'll be cool to see him in his first game with this offense. But I think Jimmy Garoppolo, having already played a full season with Kendrick Bourne, might be a little bit more comfortable looking towards him and some of the options that he'll have because he'll definitely have some time. I don't necessarily think the Arizona defensive line is going to bring too much pressure or is going to cause a lot of havoc in that backfield. So I think Jimmy Garoppolo is going to have his options when going to receivers and to George Kittle as well. And I think Kendrick Bourne is going to be that safety blanket for him, either him or Trent Taylor. I'm also interested to see Trent Taylor, who's finally healthy to start a season, which is going to be great. I'm excited to see those two guys, Trent Taylor and Kendrick Bourne. And I'm not too worried. I'm actually not too worried about the wide receiver position for now. We'll see when actually the first couple of snaps of the game to see if they're able to get separation against, Patrick Peterson and some of their better secondary guys. But for now, I'm not too worried. I still think this wide receiver core has enough to cause a lot of problems to that secondary. And I think that's more than enough weapons for Kyle Shanahan to get even a little bit creative and get some of those guys kind of open.
Well, I think an important thing to note is that two of Jimmy G's best 3 games in the pros, 2 of them came against the Cardinals, where he threw a total of 8 combined touchdowns. So he's someone I'm streaming in fantasy football this week. So if you're taking any prop bets, playing daily fantasy, DraftKings, if you want to give us a sponsorship, I'm just saying, slide in those DMs right there.
Yes.
An exterior storyline, of course, for the Niners as well is this game, obviously, is game played in San Francisco. California's on fire right now. There's a lot of smoke and debris in the air, and that could cause issues, potentially delays, postponements, or they might have to move this game. We can't really analyze too much. We don't have a crystal ball, unfortunately. All I can say is TNP that does not happen. Oh, I should also mention too, of course, Kyle Shanahan did note that the filtered in crowd noise is apparently a form of human torture. So thoughts on the fans, the faithful not being in attendance?
That'll be interesting, right? Other than the fans being in attendance, seeing a bunch of, if the game does happen, I'm sure there's going to be a lot of aerial shots of just a bunch of smoke. Like you mentioned, the fire, not only in California, but Southern Oregon is basically in flames right now. So that'll be interesting to keep an eye on to see if this game is even going to happen on Sunday. But not having a crowd there is going to be very strange. It's going to be very, very weird. Aaron Rodgers was actually talking about this yesterday in the Pat McAfee show, where he was kind of mentioning how even for them and not having for the Packers or any team really, the Saints, a lot of teams that depend on having a home crowd, it's going to be so strange. Monday night games are going to be very, very weird, not having fans there. And Levi Stadium isn't necessarily like this raucous crowd to begin with. But
I agree with you.
Okay, it's not like, okay, I'm sorry, faithful, and I'm sorry, faithful, all of Northern California, but we don't do the best of creating some of the. Yeah,
they're going to eat us alive on that one.
I'm sorry, but we don't do the best to create the biggest home field advantage as far as crowd noise as some other teams in the league. But still, it's not having a stadium that's supposed to have 70,000 people in it being completely empty. It's going to be very, very strange.
Know where I'll be in Week 15? Watching the Niners beat the shit out of the Cowboys. But as far as Week 1, yeah, just putting it out there. Live 49 Reasons to Listen takeover of AT&T Stadium coming in Week 15. But for now, score predictions. What do you think, Jose?
I'm thinking 31-20 Niners. I'm thinking a little bit of offense, and I'm thinking the defense will do just enough.
31-20. So you actually are picking them to cover the Vegas line.
I am picking them to cover for now.
Okay, fair enough. Might shift. Well, this is the published proof. So this is what you're going to go back on. So if Old Takes Exposed comes out, this is what will be used against you. So
yes.
As far as my score prediction, I think I can foresee them covering as well. I am going to go with a generous 34-21. A little bit more high scoring than what I thought, but I think the offenses are going to be way ahead of the defenses. And I think similar to what we saw on Thursday Night Football, even if the Niners can establish a lead, I could see them giving them a little bit of garbage time points, allowing Cliff Kingsbury and that offense to try and whittle their way back into the game. But what do you think, Faithful? That's the important thing. Are you ready for Week 1? Are you excited? Do you feel the anticipation in the air? Well, you should. But you know what you also should do? like, comment, and subscribe on this video. Let us know your score predictions, and we'll see who's right, who's wrong, and hopefully we'll be talking about a big W for the Niners in week 1. We'll see you next time.